Good day and welcome to another edition of Crapper with me, Tim Appleton, on my own today. Boo-hoo. It occurs to me that, in the last episode we discussed the Yes album by Yes, and what occurs to me is that we didn't... I had so many notes about the opening track, Yours Is No Disgrace. And I had so much to say that I just kept talking and talking, but I still felt like I hadn't said it all, I've said too much, I haven't said enough, let's say. So I thought maybe I'd do a quick solo video just on that one track, basically, and describing what happens in it and why I like it so much. So those are the two elements that we're going to go through. I've divided the track into 14 sections, bear with me. None of your verse, chorus, middle eight, verse, chorus here. This is, after all, Yes that we're talking about. So, we're going to go through it nominally in 14 sections, and as I say, at the end, then I'll conclude. Now, it begins with we discussed in the last video the fact that Yes is it's a British band, but they sound American. This was a constant theme of our conversation. And there are some moments where they sound almost self-consciously American, when they cover the big country riff, I think, at the beginning of Time in a Word. And they're doing something similar here at the beginning of this track. So this is Yes, in the style of, I don't know, Aaron Copland or something, out on the prairie, discovering a new world. And here comes the cavalry, the US cavalry, and that's where we start here with this Steve Howe riff, I think it was. Something like that. By the way, my guitar playing is sub Steve Howe. That should be taken into account throughout this video. So that's the opening riff, and then at some point during it, we're in E, by the way, this is the key of the track. At some point during it, the keyboard comes in, lovely Tony Kaye keyboard part, a couple of compound chords. I think it's like this. Something like that, right? But those two compound chords, we need to keep them in mind because they come up throughout this track. I'm calling it a compound chord. It's basically E and D, but with an E in the bass. So maybe it's just E and D with an E in the bass. I don't know. But for some reason I call it a compound chord. So we've got these two parts going, and then they obviously want to move it along, so they change key up to G. Then they go up to A. So we're climbing up at this point. And then at this point, they obviously need to do something new. So what they do is they go into the main riff here. So you've got your introduction, now we're going into the main riff. And the main riff is wonderful. But I think the first thing to say about it, I'll play it in a second. The first thing to say about it is that it's in a completely different key to the rest of the track. I said it was in E, the track starts in E. But by this point they're going to A sharp or B flat, depending on whether you're a real musician or not. But, talk about a diagonal key. They couldn't be more unrelated, but they decide to go up into this completely unrelated key for the main riff. Why are they doing that? Well, because presumably they want to raise this main riff up on a pedestal, on the pedestal of A sharp, in order to create a dramatic effect. And my God, what a dramatic effect! It goes da 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 da. So that's the main riff. It does that 4 times, I think, in total, with slightly different arrangements throughout. Now that's beautiful. This is one of the things that the moments of Yes's music that I find totally sublime, and this is the first Yes track I ever heard, so it bowled me over this section. Again, we've got the compound chords. Remember I said D, and then here we've got the same chords. So it's like A sharp, G sharp, something. So you've got the sort of psychological echo of the first bit here. Also, credit where credit's due. This is where, about halfway through, I think, the amazing bass player, Chris Squire, because everybody in Yes is all switched on all the time, like they're all present all the time, and they're all trying to do something interesting at all points. And about halfway through, the bassist, Chris Squire, goes into F, which is the 5th of the scale. So they're in da 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 da, and he's going, and then brings a sort of tension to it. This inversion, and he goes back up to the root, da, 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 which is highly dramatic. And he does a similar thing actually at the end of Perpetual Change, which is the last track on the Yes album, which ends with a theme which is slightly similar to this one. I think it might be in D. Da, 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 da. So again, you have those compound chords, and that that sort of contrast is really nice, and it comes up again. It comes up in the main riff of Yours Is No Disgrace, and actually Chris Squire does the same trick there. He goes. There's an amazing moment where he holds the 5th of the scale for a while, and he goes. Does something like that on the bass, and he goes back to the root there at that point, and again it's incredibly dramatic. Now, part 3, as I've dubbed it, of Yours Is No Disgrace is where the vocals come in, right? And this is a sort of choral part. It's in a 3-part harmony, a la Crosby, Stills and Nash. And yesterday a morning came a smile upon your face. But of course, it's in 3-part harmonies. I can't do 3-part harmonies at once, of course, since I only have one voice. But it's got a sort of keyboard drone underneath it. The whole band stops, basically drops out, except the 3-part harmonies and this keyboard drone, which again follows the ED thing. So they sort of connecting subterranean. What's the word? Subterraneously, is that the word? With the opening and the previous section. Yesterday a morning. Now, what they do here is that they follow the same key shift structure of the opening. So it starts in D, and then it goes to G. And it goes up to A then. So they're following the EGA bit from the beginning, right? And then, as a sort of, again, nominal part 4, the verse repeats, but this time with the full band backing. There's a sort of little guitar lick, which again sort of mirrors the opening, the keyboard in the opening, and then they go back into the verse, as I said, with the full band. Yesterday's I can't remember the words, and now they're just doing the full compound chord bit. And then, of course, part 5, the reprise of the main riff in the diagonal key. What I love about those diagonals is that they I think it's the essence of art, basically, because it shouldn't make any sense, and yet it does, right? Which is amazing. And I think that it's sort of the essence of inspiration, really. Sorry, something funny just happened with my video, but I think I'm all right. Okay, good. Now, part 6. By the way, I forgot to mention that after the main riff, they have to go back to the home key, and they do it they modulate in a very sort of clever way. Da 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 da. Lovely sort of again sort of modulation with the keyboard based on a keyboard melody. It reminds me a little bit of the modulation at the beginning of "Wouldn't It Be Nice" by the Beach Boys. You know, a totally unexpected change, etc., etc. Now, at this point, part 6, they do a reprise of the verse. Hang on, where are we? Da, 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 da. Okay, so they end on the D chord, but actually it's got a B in the bass here, so it turns out to be a B minor 7. And then they use that as a sort of basis on which to modulate to D, which is the relative major chord there. And so at this point they move into D, and they introduce a new set of chords, right? D, E, G, C, basically, and then with some variations to the relative minor at the end, C and B minor. So they're singing the same tune here, now again in 3-part harmony, moving down. They've moved down a tone, but they're introducing sort of secretly. They're introducing this chord sequence. It's got a sort of walking bass on it. Something like that. Chris Squire again. Hats off to Chris Squire. And then, yours is no disgrace, yours is no disgrace. And then they go, they hit the D. And then they go back to the very beginning of the track. I should say that's the only bit that I find slightly clunky in this piece, is when they go, yours is no disgrace. Because this is where, as Sean pointed out in the last episode, this is where they're sort of using the cut and paste system in the studio as a sort of writing device. And obviously they're still slightly getting the hang of it. Hence this slightly clunky change. But anyway, apart from that, there's no clunks in this track, apart from that one. So now part 7, we're back to the beginning. Etc., etc. You know, here comes the cavalry. Here comes Yes, and then here they go into something part 8, something completely new. So they go. So they're building this up. This variation, and then they go into a guitar solo on its own, unaccompanied. I'm better at doing that bit because I can't actually play like Steve Howe, right? Who can? But yes, this is a sort of like a totally unexpected. This kind of wah guitar, solo guitar, and then the band suddenly creep back in. They start doing these slides, right? And then at the end of this section, they slide into a completely different key, which is D minor. Something like that. And then they do a whole sort of, this is a very guitar-y section, this section. Section 9, I'm calling this. It goes with a whole series of variations. Something like that. They sort of it's very sort of it sounds like they're blowing a bit actually, and they just go through all of these sort of different sections and variations, and then they stop and they go into everything stops again with that sort of C D to C and then A in the bass. So they stop and they use this as a way of modulating to D major. Right. So it goes from like D minor, serious, boo-hoo, to D major, happy. Now this point, section 10, let's say, they reprise the chords from the previous vocal section, but now just John Anderson is singing, so it's like one person stands in for all three here. Mutilated armies gathering up, crawling out of dirty. I'm singing an octave lower than John Anderson because, you know, no one can sing that high. And then what happens at this point is something amazing, that like the sun coming out from behind a cloud, a new tune emerges using the same chords, but a completely different melody. Yesterday, a morning came, a smile upon your face. Pizza's palace, morning glory, silly human, silly human, silly human race. Okay, so again, down to the relative minor. Now this is like I think the second apotheosis of the track after the main riff at the beginning. There's two highlights here, and this is one of them. Right. By the way, that tune was copied later on by the anti-Yes Tom Robinson band for their song Winter of '79. Anyway, it's because it's great. Now, after this finishes, this bit, the band comes in and there's sort of, you know, they join John Anderson in his song. And then part 11, we get Yours Is No Disgrace. We get this reprise of the sort of random wild guitar solo bit. He goes, sounds better when he does it, with that musical joke in there. And then, okay, so now we've got one of these linking passages again with references to the compound chords, and then we go to part 12. Again, is back to the verse with the full band, 3-part harmony again. And then, of course, again, the G, and then the A, and then yours is no disgrace. Da, 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 da. And then we have a final reprise of the main riff. So we've gone right back to the beginning of the track. You know, track's gone full circle, as it were. Da, 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 da. And then part 14 is just a weird ending where they turn it all into slides. La, da, da, da. Da, 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 da. And then they slide out of view altogether, and that's the end of the track. Why do I love this track so much? Well, I think that it's the way it's structured is so clever. I think like they're constantly thinking about the track as a totality. This is not a surprise because this is how progressive rock works, basically. So they're thinking about it in terms of the whole, and everything that happens within it is a reference to the whole. But some of it, as I said, is so subterranean that it kind of escapes your notice. But then later on, you realise that they've done these set of really subtle things. For example, the way that they iterate the verse 3 times essentially, and at the beginning they're doing it with the drone, and in the second one it's the same vocal parts, but they've cautiously inserted a series of guitar chords underneath it, a chord sequence which is different from the first bit, And then in the third part, they use that chord sequence as the basis for a completely new tune. So there's a sort of mutation of the verses through the track, which is structurally very sophisticated and very clever. And as I say, you don't always notice it first time, but as you go, if you sort of analyze it a bit, you think, "Oh my God, that's what they're doing! Isn't that great?" And even the bit where they move from D minor to D major. I mean, it's like they've planned the whole thing. Like, you couldn't have planned it better, except they probably didn't plan it. They just kind of wrote it in a sort of flourish, and then afterwards they realised what they'd done, because that's how art works. But yeah, it's this. It's got great ideas in it. 2 great apotheoses, as I said, which is quite a lot for a 10-minute track. You could normally do a 20-minute prog track with 2 apotheoses, but they've just tightened it up and put it into 10. It's got these 2 apotheoses, which I think sort of represents the fact also that they tend to do everything in 2s. Yes, so if they've got a reference here if they've got a chord sequence here, they'll use it again somewhere else. If they've got a drone here, they'll use it somewhere else. If there's a compound chord here, they'll use it somewhere else. And again, so there's a sort of rule of 2, and that applies to the apotheoses in the track themselves. But these apotheoses are so well framed, and this framing emerges from, as I say, the structural totality of the piece. That it's just a beautiful total package, basically. It's kind of structured like classical music, really. And I suppose you might say, well, why not just listen to classical music then? If that's what you like, that sort of structured the structured totality. But classical orchestras don't have Bill Bruford on drums. All right, well, I hope that's given you some idea of why I like this track, why I love this track, and I'll see you on the next edition of Crapper, which should be coming out shortly. Remember to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed any of this nerdiness, and yeah, we'll see you soon.